In the beginning, man used sticks, stones, and animal parts for survival alone. Then, something happened along the way. What could that have been? It's time to speculate away with your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips. This is the dawn of music. This is Music Student 101.
So I have here a blended coffee beverage.
Ooh. I've got here just coffee, just black,
Hot,
just
a regular kind of thing.
just regular. Yeah, I've given up on trying to make coffee taste good. When I've decided that what I like is for coffee to wake me up, but it actually does taste. Anyway,
Function is the key, right?
function is the key.
Sadly, I normally go to a local coffee, place, but I just didn't have the time. The closest thing was a well-known coffee chain.
Oh yeah, that one.
But in the past, I've actually editing some of these episodes when I get iced coffee, I would hear the ice jingling around in the coffee cup. So today I decided I'm going to get blended. So listen to this.
Smooth and silent.
I'm shaking it. No one hears a thing.
No one hears anything.
But I probably didn't need one this tall because I hope it won't get too annoying towards the end of this episode.
If Jeremy starts talking really fast, you'll know what happened.
Mm-hmm. Might have to go back and post and slow down myself a little bit. Well, today is kind of a fun episode.
Yeah, we're going to try to be a little chill and laid back this time because we've been going over some pretty meaty stuff lately, right?
I think, yeah, and I think we've been actually promising to be more chilled and laid back a lot lately, which maybe means we're getting a little more chill. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, we were sitting here sipping our coffee drinks this morning.
First of all, before we get into the episode, let's talk about a couple of cool things.
Okay.
Not long ago, we put out a call to action for our good listeners to give us some kind of rating. That helps to spread the word.
Indeed.
And so I have 2 reviews I kind of want to share with you guys.
Very nice.
This is from iTunes that I found these. Monk Freak, I love these names. Monk Freak 72 says, "Great podcast. This is great!" !
Thank you, Monk Freak. We do our best.
Brief and to the point.
Yeah.
No BS. Speaking of no BS, the next one actually I love this. I can't. Wordwrath, spelled W-E-R-D, wrath.
All one word.
All one word, says best and no BS.
Yeah.
Matt, do you think that we are free of BS?
I thought we BS'd a lot.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of like... But maybe we don't BS as much as we think
Maybe we don't BS nearly as much as we think we do.
My wife listens to this true crime podcast, and these 2 girls, they're awesome. I don't know the names. I can't. But they're really foul. They're foul. They cuss a lot. But they're constantly digressing and going off on side things. But to me, that's kind of a little bit entertaining,
Right, yeah.
Especially when it comes to talking about these heavy theory topics.
Right,
sometimes it's fun to get
I see here Wordwrath went on to elaborate straight to the point, no BS side rambling. Again, I thought maybe Jeremy just edits out all our side rambling.
I do edit out a good bit of it, actually.
I mean, yeah, because to make a 40-minute podcast takes a couple of hours. When we're doing good. So
exactly, you got
there has to be some BS side rambling going on somewhere. But anyway,
but they also said Wordwrath also said if you're training in music production and music theory, subscribe to this. This is a great accompaniment to your education. Keep it up.
And thank you so much. It means the world to us that you guys appreciate what we're trying to do here.
So that alone will boost our presence a little bit in the search world. Wordwrath also had a little bit of constructive criticism for us, which I think we should point out here.
Right.
That he or she said that check your tags for the show. It's hard to pull you up by searches of a random nature, like if you type in music theory
or music student
it doesn't bring you up. So
yeah, we could look into fixing that.
Which is strange because I use Libsyn as the podcasting host, and
right.
when I'm filling out the information for each episode, it does have a tags field.
They make us tag everything,
and I fill that up to the brim. I think of every tag I could possibly think of.
Yeah.
iTunes apparently does not take tags anymore. They take the tags from the description, from the show description.
Okay.
So that's my understanding of it currently. But if we have some social media experts out there that
So our show description should be the Music Theory Music Student podcast for music people that compose music.
I don't know, man. I think one tag is enough for each thing, but apparently we need to find a way to more artfully include the tags or more efficiently. So if we have social media experts out there that know more about this or podcast
because we're pretty old and social media illiterate.
We are, honestly. First and foremost, we're music people. Along with that comes music tech. Along with that comes a little bit of multimedia based knowledge.
A little bit, but a lot of my music tech knowledge and experience comes from a pre-social media world in which that was not really a thing, right?
Not at all. We're having to learn from our students about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we have to learn from our students sometimes about we're old. I'm not even on Twitter.
Me neither. I'm on it, but I quit it and I still get the emails and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah, and maybe somebody out there can help me with this. I've always sort of thought, what is the reason for me to be on this?
It's just a distraction. It's another distraction. I don't need any more distractions.
It sounds horrible. Sorry, just my personal opinion, but my impression of Twitter is just a bunch of just negative, horrible stuff just flying around the internet at people like just 24/7, and I've never been given a good reason to be on Twitter, so
One of my good friends mentioned it was kind of like walking into a parking lot and yelling.
Yeah, right. except imagining thousands, millions of people in that parking lot. It's not just you.
Sounds kind of noisy.
Yeah.
So anyways, if you guys have any tips or anything you want to share with us to help us boost our presence that we haven't thought of,
yes, please get in touch and we will do what we can.
Email us at info@musicstudent101.com or look us up on Facebook. Send me a message. I'm often checking those things.
Yes, Jeremy is often checking those things.
Okay, you ready, man?
Yes, I'm ready.
Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum. Dum, 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 dum. What is it?
Music professionals, ladies and gentlemen. This is how we approximate.
Well, we couldn't get rights to the London Symphony Orchestra version of it.
We can't. That piece is Strauss. That's what it was.
That was it.
Strauss also sprach Zarathustra. Is the name of that? Zarathustra is a goddess or something. And
you know what that sounds like, Matt?
what?
Side BS.
That's the problem right there. We BS all the time, but you guys think our BS is like really smart, intelligent stuff because
It did sound kind of smart.
Yeah, we just nerd out so much that our BS sounds like actual education, which it's not.
Fake it till you make it, baby. Or edit it out. If it
Or
doesn't work.
edit it out.
Okay, so all that to say, yes, this will be our first history episode, and we're excited. This is going to be kind of loose. This is going to be really the dawn of music. We're going to actually talk about before what we speculate might have happened.
Yeah, and all of this is, number one, not quite our field.
Yep.
And number two, speculation, because as an umbrella statement over all of this, we kind of have to say it is not 100% known everything that happened. Because when you're talking about pre-recorded history, prehistoric stuff, then we have to put this puzzle together with the pieces we have. And not even us really. Anthropologists are piecing together this puzzle. People smarter than us
And they can't get it from any writing. This is predates writing or any kind of the passing down of any kind of written, education or tradition.
Right. So we are starting at the very beginning here.
And I am talking about 2 million years ago.
2 million years ago.
Again, prehistory, pre-writing, right?
Yes.
What we do know based on, I guess, artifacts that we have found and tools that were made, that we know that during this time, also known as the Stone Ages,
Right.
that our ancestors were making tools using stones and sticks and whatnot.
Is that why they called it that? Is that why they called it the Stone Age?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And there's the Old Stone Age and the New Stone Age. We'll start off obviously with the Old Stone Age, the Paleolithic era, which you've heard before, I'm sure.
I think so. Yeah.
This is 2 million BCE. Between that and about 8,000 BCE.
So what is BCE?
Initially, BC was before Christ.
It was before Christ, right?
But BCE, I learned it at one point, but...
Is it, I think it's before the Common Era?
Before the Common Era, okay.
Yep.
But anyways, so this is all, still the Old Stone Ages we're talking about, the Paleolithic era.
Mm-hmm.
During this time, people were mainly hunters and gatherers.
Right. Feels like I knew that.
And during this time, our ancestors had mainly 3 classifications, pretty much in this order, though staggered throughout different locations. We had the Homo habilis, we had Homo erectus, and then Homo sapiens. Now, the first of these, Homo habilis, was known as the handyman, I guess. Habilis is the translation of handiness or ability.
Man with ability.
That was the guy making stone tools.
So they called him Homo habilis because he had the ability to make these tools.
Exactly.
That ability coming from opposable thumbs and some level of intelligence, I would assume.
Exactly.
Okay.
I don't know if this was the guy that made fire or not. I think maybe Homo erectus made fire, but again, historians, let us know. But yeah, Homo habilis was making the tools.
Okay.
Homo erectus finally started walking upright.
Right.
We're not going to get into why we decided to do that.
Yeah.
There's times where I swear crawling is easier.
Yeah. So there was no Homo needus, almost needus a turkey sandwiches or.
Need us to reach just that thing higher up in the tree-ish.
Yeah.
Treeus. So this how this man started walking upright between.
Homo, I've just been stressed us.
Yeah. But anyway, this was between 2 million and 50,000 years ago. So we're getting a little bit closer here. During this period, a few things are happening now.
Okay.
In 60,000 BCE, between that and 30,000 BCE, people began to take an interest in art. This is when we started using carbon dating and finding that some of these cave paintings and clay figures go back to as far as that,
So what made them want to start taking an interest in art? Do we know anything about? I mean, was it just an evolving higher intelligence, or?
I think this is where we can have a little fun with our speculations, Matt, and I have a few ideas.
Okay, good. Let's have some fun.
So, when I'm thinking about how cave art might have started, or what reason it might not have been all for enjoyment. It might have actually been, hey, this is how you kill this animal.
Oh, wow.
This is just my theory.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of instruction. Or maybe it's like taking a picture of a moment in time. This is my cave. These are my feats. This is what I've done.
So it wasn't sort of self-expression so much as, yeah, and you could have sort of been teaching other people, this is what the animals we kill look like. This is what the animals that tend to kill us look like.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
So people are thinking around the time that they started experimenting with art, cave art, and this isn't just cave art. This is also like little clay things that go beyond a utilitarian purpose.
Right, yeah.
So it's not just to carry things. Maybe this guy made a clay picture of his grandma.
Yeah.
Or of a baby, like a cute baby woolly mammoth or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a point where we have clay pots that are just used to carrying water from the lake so we don't have to go down to the lake all the time. And at some point, we made the clay pot look pretty. Yeah. And why did that happen?
I don't know. Maybe it started off as to distinguish one pot from the next, or maybe an ownership thing. This is mine, this is yours, and then and then maybe somebody made something that just wasn't a clay pot at all. I was like, what are you gonna do with this stupid little thing? It looks like a snowman.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
All speculation.
All complete some anthropologist is going to rip us a new one. I can feel it right now. But yeah. All right.
But these are just some things that kind of came to mind when I was reading this and thinking about why some of these things might be,
Yeah.
And it's kind of, it's also, scientists also think that around this time that maybe they're starting to experiment with sound a little bit.
Experiment with sound.
So what are some reasons they might do that?
Well, I think they could sort of use it as a way to call to each other and say, hey, I'm over here, right? Don't don't throw your spear at me or something. You know, I'm not an animal that you're hunting. I'm another human.
Before the invention of fluorescent orange hunting vests.
Right, yeah. Before they had bright orange, they had this
Put over
sort
your
of
camouflage.
yell, hey, over here, or, you know.
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking, too. You know, I was thinking maybe to signal each other, possibly to coordinate attacks or hunting ventures. You know,
right, yeah.
Maybe Ung is up in the tree with a spear.
Right, yeah, yeah.
And Og is on the ground, shaking the bush. So
Og?
Og, yeah. And he's shaking the bush so that the saber-toothed tiger's like, hey, what's over there? And the saber-toothed tiger starts walking over there, and Ug
says, now.
jumps from the tree and kills the saber-tooth, because it's that simple to kill a saber-toothed tiger.
Right, yeah. You know.
But, you know, they could be coordinating attacks on creatures for hunting. They could be coordinating attacks on other gangs, other tribes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, maybe warn against rival tribes or communicate with more neighborly tribes.
And that they would need different sounds to do that, to coordinate attacks on other tribes versus to coordinate hunting and things, yeah.
And here's another thing I thought about. What if they're actually trying to, not unlike the duck hunter who brings out the duck call, maybe they're trying to emulate mating calls to also lure animals in for the hunting purposes.
Yeah, that
reasons to experiment with sound.
Yeah, reasons to experiment with sound and to sort of start. That would be it seems like that would be a good reason to start needing to know or needing to distinguish differences in sounds, right?
Right.
So like a duck sounds like this versus some other animal sounds a different way. So it's not just sound as a general concept, it's not, and it's no longer an any sound will do kind of world. So now we've got to start thinking about it.
We're going from grunts to hoots to maybe eventually whistles of some kind. All speculation.
Well, I this is not my field. I've heard anecdotes over the years. I've heard it said that some people believe that humans had music before they had speech. And this could be sort of what they were talking about.
Yeah. Let's talk about rhythm actually for a little bit, because I think about, let's go back to the Stone Ages. Let's go back to the old Stone Ages where people are actually sitting there making things with banging rocks together.
Yeah.
If you're hammering something, you're not like pop, pop, pop.
Right. Yeah. You're doing it.
Pop.
Right. You're doing it with a pulse.
There's a pulse. There's a kunk, 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 kunk. You get into a groove.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder if that was a very ancient thing as well. And maybe one cave guy was like, hey, I see him doing that. I'm going to try and do it at the same time as him.
Do it at the same time
and they
as
just
him.
fell over laughing because that was so darn cool and new and entertaining.
Or they could have thought, hey, this is a really great way to synchronize work. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, like stroke.
Yeah,
stroke.
right. Yeah. Maybe those Vikings sort of figured out at some point. It's probably before the Vikings. That's much later, right?
Sure, they had boats.
Edit.
Og and Og didn't even have boats.
You drop them in the water, they're just going to sink.
Yeah.
But yeah, they could have figured out really quick. Hey, this goes faster and is more synchronized because if we all do it at the
working together.
And two, just I don't know. Maybe this is just my cultural bias or whatever, but it seems so intuitive, right? To just. Because like you said, you don't hammer something arrhythmically. If you're going to do the same act a series of times, it almost seems like instinct to just do it. You don't even think about doing it that way. You just do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way hearts beat, right? They don't.
Yes, there's something very, very connected, life like biology. And rhythms.
So.
When I knock on a door, I do the shave and a haircut, but that's just because I know I'm trying to be fun. Before that, I just knocked on the door, pop, 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 pop.
Which is a rhythm.
Yep.
A fast one, but yeah.
So, little things like that,
Yep.
Kind of curious about that. Well, let's move on from the Paleolithic or Old Stone Ages to the Neolithic or New Stone Ages.
The New Stone Age. I never knew that's what Neolithic meant.
I just found out the other
New
night.
Stone Age.
I learned this all a long, long time ago, back in the Stone Ages.
Back in the Stone Ages.
I've forgotten a lot of things since then.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever learned some of this stuff. So
it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
little diversion from the usual. This the new Stone Ages, the Neolithic era, was between 8,000 BCE and 3,500 BCE.
Okay.
So during this time, our ancestors are finally learning to settle down.
Right. They're farming.
Exactly, agriculture. So
And why have to kill food when we can just grow it?
yeah, I'm not going to chase this herd of buffaloes all over the region during the season changes and live like a buffalo. I want to live like a man, damn it. Homo habilis. Homo sapien. I want to be a Homo sapien.
Homo sapien.
Man capable of thought, or abstract thought, maybe.
And that's what we are.
Yeah, like abstract or critical thought.
Technically speaking, anyway.
Hey, you know something kind of cool as another side BS note? I was actually reading a pretty interesting article on the NPR site today, and it was talking about how, according to this study from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, our Neanderthal ancestors actually shared a lot more phenotypes with us than we initially thought. Phenotypes being observable characteristics or traits that were maybe influenced by the environment on the species.
Is very coincidental you should mention that up. I was just looking at the Neanderthals. I was researching Neanderthals recently.
No kidding.
Yeah. Just because I'm a huge education nerd, and this is how I spend my time.
You're gonna dig this, man. Well, it's not that great, but it is interesting. The genotypes that the phenotypes that we share, the genetic similarities that we share with the Neanderthals are all based on how we react to sunlight.
Really?
Circadian rhythms.
Yeah.
Pigmentation of skin and hair.
Wow.
Suggesting that there might have actually been blonde and red-headed Neanderthals.
Yeah, I heard that.
So that's...
I heard that, and yeah, because I was researching that too. And this is the most veritable and trusted source of information in our time, Wikipedia. But according to Wikipedia, we share 98 point something percent of our genetics with Neanderthals.
That's a little too much.
That's a lot, yeah. Well, it sounds like a lot, but I think in terms of genetics, it's those last 2% that can make all the difference in the world, right?
Apparently, between knuckle jaggers and people putting men on the moon, apparently this is a little 2%.
Yeah, that 2% can make a huge difference in the terms in genetics, is my understanding. I don't know, but yeah, and they talk about like the redheaded Neanderthals and the pigment kind of things, and some people believe that that's where redheaded came from, but a lot of scientists also think of that as a coevolution, that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals eventually evolved a red hair pigmentation. That we don't get red hair from the Neanderthals having evolved that. It's not a line. It's like we both did it sort of silent. Because there's a period there of about 5,000 years in Europe where Homo sapiens and Neanderthals are coexisting.
And science are suggesting that some of them might have found a fondness for each other.
Yeah.
And that there could have been some cross...
Yeah. And that's a matter of some debate as well. Not everybody thinks that happened. But there are some scientists that do think that happened.
I think I know people who are proof that might have actually happened.
I was just about to say, Homo sapiens being capable of thought is an assertion I feel like debating sometimes myself.
Yeah. We're being a little too nice to ourselves here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But all that aside, yeah. So it's fascinating stuff.
So people found that they can settle down in fertile places like near the rivers, such as the Tigris and Euphrates up in Mesopotamia. Yeah. One of the first known human settlements, civilizations, I guess you would say.
Right. Yeah.
They figured, well, we have water here, we have fertile land, we can grow stuff. Hey, you put that seed there. They learned how to grow things.
They learned how to grow things.
Now this is happening all over the world. Now that man is settled, they can start developing communities.
Right.
Possibly some notion, or maybe some form or notion of entertainment. Maybe ways to entertain each other. Yeah.
And again, all pure speculation, but I kind of think, well, because hunting your food takes an enormous amount of time, right?
Yeah. There's no time to dance a jig.
Yeah, if you're dancing a jig now, it means you're going to be starving. You're going to be starving tomorrow, right? Because you didn't go kill anything.
That'll be the last jig you ever...
It'll be the last jig you ever dance. But yeah, if you become sort of agricultural, once the seeds are planting, they're growing, you probably have more time on your hands. I don't know. feels like you would have more time on your hands.
I would think so, because otherwise you're sitting there watching corn grow. That takes a lot of time. You can write a lot of really good songs watching corn grow.
Yeah. The corn isn't going to run away, is what I'm saying, right?
Yes, sir. Kind of boring times, man. I used to chase all these saber-tooths. Now
I'm just sitting here watching corn grow. Yeah. I did read once that hunting, the becoming omnivorous, meaning hunting meat, was essential to the evolution of human intelligence. Because
strategy involved in
right, strategy involved, and you had to coordinate, and we really weren't equipped to be predators, right? We didn't have claws or fangs. We didn't run particularly fast. So we had to get creative if we were actually going to hunt meat. So becoming omnivorous and hunting was very necessary to evolve intelligence.
That's interesting, but I'm going to throw something back whoever came up with that theory. I'm going to throw a little something back at them. As the devil's advocate or as the vegetarian's advocate. Because the farmers had to start to really pay attention to seasons and cycles. And I think that involves a certain level of abstract or
abstract thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seasons and cycles and, what... I am a 40-year-old college graduate in the year 2017, and I have this raised bed of dirt out in my backyard, and I'm trying to grow some corn, and I cannot for the life of me grow.
Do it.
So, yeah, I don't know. Neanderthals, apparently that's somewhere where those two genes made a difference with me and the Homo sapiens.
Yeah. Think it's easy to grow corn, boy?
You can't grow stink on a monkey. Another fine Simpsons quote.
Yeah. That's, if there were any farmers out there who had not been offended by this conversation so far.
Yeah, right.
Now they definitely are.
Well,
we're from Alabama.
We are from Alabama.
We can talk like that.
We are totally, yeah.
Those accents are not feigned.
No. Especially if I say 9, like the word 9.
Yeah.
8, 9, 10. 10.
Yeah. You know what I like about this podcast, Jeremy, is that there's no BS side rambling.
That's one of my favorite things.
Wordwrath is going to abandon us now.
He's going to take down the rating.
I retract my positive review.
Full of BS, but still great podcast, maybe.
Full of BS.
Still great podcast, maybe. Hopefully. Okay, let's get back to the kid.
Okay. All right.
We at this point we've kind of gotten up to the civilization, the forming of civilization. So
right.
And with that comes written history, and we'll take it from that point. But we're kind of doing this episode to get you a little bit excited about the up-and-coming history episodes. Yeah. But first, I would like to talk about this really cool finding. This is not new news, actually, but to you, some of you, and to me, certainly, it may be. Mm-hmm. Or it was when I was checking it out. And I got this from an article in the National Geographic News back in June 24th, 2009, by James Owen. Back in 2008, in South Germany, in the Ach Valley, there's a cave system. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try not to butcher this because my German is not much greater than my Italian. The Hohlefels Caves.
All right.
In this cave system, they found an almost complete flute made from a bone.
Wow.
This was the radius or the forearm equivalent of the griffin vulture.
Okay.
Now, the griffin vulture was a very huge bird.
I wonder if that was inspired the mythological creature griffin. They kind of thought, it was so huge. I thought it looked like the size of a lion or something.
Well, I'm talking 8.7-foot wingspan.
That's huge.
Practically a 9-foot wingspan. Yeah, that thing will put a shadow on you flying overhead. But I'm kind of wondering, was this bird particularly easy to catch? If you think about it, vultures, what do? They gather...
They're scavengers.
They're in this feeding frenzy around this dead animal. Any cave guy could easily kind of maybe quietly walk up.
Yeah. Or
throw a rock or whatever and take down this creature.
Yeah, especially a Homo sapien that has the intelligence and, the ability to go, hey, that thing's just sitting there, whack.
Strategize with Og.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what kind of what good eating they were, but maybe they were good music.
Well, to get to the bone, they had to get the meat off it somehow. I'm sure they ate it.
Mm-hmm. Use it. And
rather than just throwing the bone away, they decided to make a flute out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a flute.
Yeah, I mean, it's a flute. Yeah.
Use it.
And rather than just throwing the bone away, they decided to make a flute out of it.
Again, all speculation, but I think that might be how they were able to use the vulture radius instead of a saber tooth.
Right,
Femur.
yeah.
Because we know all about these ancient animals, right?
Right, yeah. We're clearly experts in this.
But the flute itself was actually it's 12 pieces all found within a space within about a square foot. So this area has not been messed with
At all. Okay,
yeah,
wow.
over time. It was 22 centimeters in length, 8 millimeters in diameter, which is very, very small if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's a very thin little whistle.
Yeah.
It had 5 holes. I'm going to make an astronomical speculation here and wonder to myself if that has anything to do with some primitive form of the pentatonic scale. That's astronomical speculation.
That's a pretty astronomical leap.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
The pentatonic scale seems to be one of those basic.
It does, that's what I was just
cross-cultural.
sitting here thinking about. Is it seems to be common throughout the world and throughout history. The pentatonic scale. There is something special about it.
Or some way primitive version of it,
Yeah.
But another thing, they found that there was 2 V-shaped notches carved into the part of the instrument that would appear to be the mouthpiece.
Nice.
So these people they've been running some experiments with sound. They've done things to find some desired effect.
Right. Yeah.
Be it a mating call type thing to lure animals in, or be it to actually entertain each other and make strange sounds that the human voice doesn't normally make, and therefore it kind of blows their minds.
Yeah. The second one is the one I want to be true.
Me too. Me too.
Which doesn't make it true, obviously.
No.
But it is definitely the one I want to be true.
But it does suggest a certain magic about music that I think we both believe in.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, in these same excavations, not far from this area, they also found what appear to be 2 ivory flutes.
Ivory, huh?
Yeah, and you know where ivory comes from?
Elephants?
Or at the time,
Woolly mammoths.
the woolly mammoth.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a woolly mammoth tusk?
It's huge.
It's huge and it's curvy as hell.
Yeah.
So this was a very complicated process, and I think required a good bit more abstract thought because it involved carving a cylindrical shape out of a naturally curved tusk, right? You have to split it, carve out the center, which would be the hole where the wind blows through, and then somehow reseal it. I can't imagine how they would be resealing this other than with sticky little animal guts or some kind of resin, pine resin or something.
I have no idea. You know what strikes me, a question that strikes me, and there may not be a good answer to this, but I'm sure there's an answer that I want to be true. Why would they carve these flutes out of ivory if it's so hard, when we know they could just carve them out of vulture bone, right? If we're just using them to call to each other or something, why? If it's so much harder to do it, why would they take the extra effort to make flutes out of ivory?
I can only speculate that they're thinking longevity. It's like, I don't want to have to tackle down.
I don't want to have to do this again.
Yeah.
That's plausible, I suppose. Yeah.
I noticed this ivory lasts a lot longer than this little pile of vulture bones.
Yeah. The explanation I want to be true is that the ivory sounded better.
That's what I want to hear too.
Yeah.
That's what I want to think too.
Is that there was some quality to the ivory flutes that they liked better.
Like a resonance.
And it's like, so this is more work, but it's going to produce sounds that we enjoy more.
Yeah, like craftsmanship, taking pride in your work kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I want to believe
Or
too.
just sort of timbrely. It's like, this sounds nicer, smoother, That's what I want to believe.
It's more sturdy. It's more durable. It'll survive the trip from here to wherever,
Yeah.
All good speculations, in my opinion. So dig this. So dating methods again have determined these finds that we're talking about, these bone whistles and these little ivory flutes to have been 35,000 years old.
Right.
So this is in fact during the Paleolithic era.
So then that's the old Stone Age.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So let's back up here. Maybe this wasn't strictly for survival. Maybe this occurred before the dawn of agriculture.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And finally civilization.
Right.
So maybe that suggests that music for entertainment was actually a much older thing than we know.
Yeah.
Or than we think.
It could be. It could be. Like I said, some people, I have heard it said that it is believed in some areas that humans had music before they had speech.
Mm-hmm. Scientists are speculating during this time if music was used for a purpose, it was certainly instrumental, if I may, in improving social cohesion and communication, which then led to the expansion of the modern human relative to our Neanderthal
Compared to our
population.
poor Neanderthal second cousins over there who are a little slow and didn't really...
With those 2 gene differences.
Yeah, and who didn't really didn't really develop art or music or that sort of aesthetic sense. You know, they were strictly utilitarian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Huh.
So that's kind of a fun little thing to mull on, I think.
Yeah,
Mull
it's
over.
fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff.
And now the speculation has become more fact because we're moving into an era.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of tease. We're going to have episodes on this kind of stuff. But for right now, we're going to give you a little preview
We're going to kind of tease, yeah.
of what to look for.
Basically. So we told you that story to tell you this story.
Yep, exactly. So before the Middle Ages, you were mentioning that the Greek and
Yeah, what
Roman-
we call ancient music.
ancient music. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that.
The oldest piece of notated music that we know of was found in a tomb in Greece. And it is called the Epitaph of Sekalos. And I think if my history serves me correctly, this was written for Sekalos, not by Sekalos. But it is actually written, and there are words, and there is a type of music notation which we can now interpret. And you know, and people do. You can hear recordings of this made. You know, it is very pentatonic.
Okay.
Yeah. It is very. It is very. Generally, it is agreed upon that in Greek music, there was a plucked stringed instrument, often, and a lyre.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Generally, people sang and played the same note, so monophonic.
Okay.
You know, meaning one melody, but that melody shared between an instrument and a singer was typically
In unison together, right?
right. Yeah. In fact, I read somewhere once that there's some writings of, I think, Plato, who is actually complaining about these new musicians who will actually sing one note and play another, and how ridiculous that is.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Devils.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
like doubles.
right. And it's kind of this, you know, kids today kind of rant by,
They don't know how good they had it back then. Kids
Right.
today, geez.
yeah. But, you know, theoretically speaking, this is a Pythagorean tuning system,
Okay.
which means what happens is we take the monochord, the Pythagorean chord, you know, and that plays a note. If you play the harmonic that is exactly halfway on that string, and guitar players will know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the 12th fret.
Mm-hmm.
You know, exactly half the length of that string.
A node, otherwise known as.
A node, otherwise, you know, you get that note that exists in a 2-to-1 ratio frequency-wise.
Uh-huh.
You know, but it's actually also exists in a 2-to-1 ratio lengthwise, right?
Yeah.
And so the rest of the notes are derived by proportions of that, by
Divisions.
division, yeah, dividing in half and dividing in half and dividing in half until you get a range of notes. And it is not exactly the 12-note system we have today, because, you know, centuries and centuries later, equal temperament would come along. Because what that meant was, what Pythagorean tuning meant was that not all things were created equal. It was mathematical proportions, you know, not equivalent proportions.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the distance between, you know, let's say D and E was not necessarily the distance between G and A, because it was a mathematical proportion.
Yeah, you got a major second up down here, and you got a major second up here.
Yeah.
But they will be two different.
But they could be, because the notes were derived from this proportional division of a string, right? And this is what equal temperament fixed. Centuries later, we came in and said, let's just cut all this and make all of these equivalent, and then look at all the great stuff we can do. But we know it was a Pythagorean tuning. and we know a little bit about sort of the texture, the monophonic texture and things. Beyond that, we don't know a whole lot compared to later eras about what Greek music was like. Same thing for Roman music, ancient music. We're still piecing together from writings that we have, from notational methods that we're still interpreting, and things. We're sort of piecing it together bit by bit. When you get past the ancient era into the medieval era, the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
This is when we start really being fairly certain about what was going on. And there are still questions to be answered about the Middle Ages, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
But the Middle Ages, these guys themselves spend a lot of time looking back at ancient civilizations. Our civilization tends to look forward, right?
Okay.
The next best thing is coming, right? We look to the future. We can't wait for that new iPhone, that kind of thing. We're forward. They were very backwards looking. Like the best civilizations were the one that used to exist.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Middle Ages were themselves trying to recreate what had happened in the Greek and Roman cultures. Their music was very monophonic. The most educated people of the Middle Ages, at least in Europe, were the religious people, the nuns, monks, priests. These were the educated people, and these were the people who wrote down notation systems.
Right. These were the original kind of people who were carrying the tradition of music and making it to where it could be repeated and replicated.
Yeah. People who are not monks and priests and what have you were almost certainly making music too. We just don't know a lot about what their music was like because, they didn't write it down until later, right? Until later in the Middle Ages. And the Middle Ages spans a huge amount of time, right? From somewhere around 200 CE-ish when the Roman Empire falls, all the way to the Renaissance, which is 1300 CE, the very beginnings of it. So this is a huge amount of time.
We're talking a millennium, like a 1,000 years.
Yeah, easily.
So we're teasing the Middle Ages here.
Yeah, we're teasing. We're going to go back and explore all of this.
Yeah, there's actually going to be a podcast on the Middle Ages, and we're going to try like hell to actually put some music.
Put some actual music in it. There is, but yeah, and there's a sort of conventional wisdom that nothing really changed for those 1,000 years. That's why it used to be called the Dark Ages, and nobody calls it that anymore.
Right.
Because the truth is, things were changing and things were evolving just slowly. But the music of this time was very religious. It was very lyrical. We're talking about the human voice, almost exclusively.
Yeah.
Almost exclusively. It was monophonic, a single melody. As the Middle Ages start progressing towards the Renaissance, secular music became a thing. With the troubadours and trouvères and minor singers and those guys. As you approach...
The traveling minstrel, so to speak.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the traveling minstrels and the court bards and things like that. As you approach the Renaissance, polyphony starts gradually becoming a thing with the organum school in Notre Dame and the cathedral, not the football team. And so forth. These things start evolving gradually. By the Renaissance, you have polyphony, which is different melodies going on at the same time, different people singing different melodies at the same time.
Harmonies, in fact.
Well,
right, or kind of...
The beginnings thereof.
Okay.
Harmony will eventually evolve out of polyphony.
I guess harmony kind of implies a certain parallel motion.
It implies a parallel motion, and it implies sort of a chord structure.
Okay.
These guys they're just all singing at the same time, and they happen to be singing something different. Right, yeah. You have in the Renaissance the early beginnings of instrumental music. Technology is advancing to the point where instruments can be tuned reliably, and that's important. Mm-hmm. So you start seeing like one of those melodies will be played on something. Really, you see that in the Middle Ages too, but in the Renaissance, instrumental music is starting to sort of become a thing. You see music that is religious, but you also see a lot of music that is secular, and the same composers composing both. in the same styles kind of things.
Wait a minute. If a church composer writes something secular, is that not a big deal back then, or is that like?
It depends on the composer.
Yeah.
The Renaissance composer Palestrina, who is very much in bed with Rome in the church, had to later apologize to the church.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. People in France and Belgium, it was less of a concern. The Renaissance was considered a humanistic period, so the church was sort of losing that stranglehold on human thinking that it had had in the Middle Ages.
Ah.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was less of a big deal. In the Renaissance, what else can I say? We have the first sort of really emotional and expressive kind of personal music. We have John Dowland and people like that who are kind of emo about everything.
The original.
Yeah, the original Kurt Cobain of the Renaissance. After the Renaissance, as the ideas and laws of polyphony, and there's some pretty strict laws that govern these things. There's the laws of counterpoint, and there's some pretty strict rules about how you can have a whole bunch of melodies at once and have it still make sense. As those laws become even more refined, they do sort of lead to harmony.
Yeah.
Before they do that, the last great polyphonic era is the Baroque era.
Okay.
And this is where we start thinking about, or start hearing about composers we may have heard before: Bach, Handel, Haydn.
That's the first time we start recognizing some of these names, right? Because
what is considered the standard repertoire.
Yeah, classical, or even though it's Baroque era, it was considered classical music, right?
Right. Yeah. Considered. So this is what is most commonly known kind of stuff. Equal temperament happens during this period. Which means that, no more Pythagorean tuning. Now we can play in any key that we want. And Bach shows that off. He writes a set of preludes in all 12 major and 12 minor keys, a set of 24 preludes.
The well-tempered clavier, is that something? Wait, no, that's a...
Yeah.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about that a little bit, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Cool.
Yeah. He then, actually, his preludes was just Book of Preludes.
Okay.
Yeah, but the well-tempered clavier did that too.
Okay.
Or at least
ran the gambit of the
keys.
Well,
it at least was again showing off. Look at what we can do now. Kind of things. But he made one book of preludes and then made another book of preludes, or he did the same thing again. Instrumental music is now an equal of vocal music for the first time in history. Yeah. We have, in the Baroque era, and we're going to go back and talk about all of this in greater detail at some point, right?
Yeah.
But in the Baroque era, we have harmony as being a thing. We have forms like ritornello form, where you keep coming back to the same sort of musical passage over and over again as a way of structuring which will lead to rondo form in the classical era and other things that are well known like that. The laws of counterpoint are extremely sophisticated. The polyphony of Bach reaches its zenith.
Yeah, it's pretty well structured stuff. He's put a lot of work into this.
Right, yeah. And then moving into the classical era, this is the era that is Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven.
Okay, those are the heavy hitters.
Yeah. And this is homophonic music, meaning this is harmony. This is definitely chords, right? Very clear phrases, very clear structures, very balanced sort of music. And Beethoven in particular uses this very aristocratic, balanced kind of music to create something that is very emotional and very personal. Taking Beethoven as their inspiration in the composers of the Romantic era, it greatly expand these highly balanced forms and structures and phrases. They create extremely emotional music that is more dissonant and more unbound by strict procedures. And they create music that is, program music comes from the Romantic era. Music that represents, galloping through a forest, or having a dream where you go to hell, and things like this. This is the 18th century now.
Starting to use music to convey actions and ideas and like physical things.
And actually it's more the 19th century. Sorry, it's the 1800s. It's the 19th century. That always messes me up.
That always messes me up.
Yeah, it's the 19th century. Moving into the 20th century.
Oh, but before we move on, should we mention some of the heavy hitters? I'm thinking Liszt.
Oh,
Chopin,
sure, yeah. There's actually a lot of heavy hitters in the Romantic era. Schumann, Schubert, Liszt, Brahms, Berlioz. Oh shoot, who else? Mendelssohn.
But a lot of these are still very European composers. Am I correct? Have we moved over to, like, I know that eventually we get into Rachmaninoff and Stravinsky.
Yeah, who are also European, but they come to America. Come to America, yeah.
Right. I apologize. I meant more like Eastern European.
Yeah,
like Turkey and
we get into
Romania.
Towards the end of the Romantic era, nationalism and exoticism are both very prevalent. Strong cultural identity with music is a big deal, and we start getting composers like Dvorak and Smetana.
Love Smetana.
People like that. Dvorak actually comes to America for a while, Moving into the 20th century, those rules that had been holding us together for so long, the rules of counterpoint that had become the rules of harmony, they start to break down. And we start really deconstructing everything, slowly at first and then picking up speed. Composers like Stravinsky question some very basic fundamental assumptions about what music ought to do, both aesthetically and constructively, and in the way that music is constructed.
Do you feel like he had a need to kind of, is this kind of like a, what is it called when people, like a rebellion of sorts?
Is it a rebellion of sorts? I think so. And we can talk about this more when we actually do a podcast on the 20th century.
Absolutely.
But I feel like they had reached the point where it was very difficult for them to come up with new things to do. The Romantic era had sort of stretched these ideas to their limits in some ways, in many significant ways. So the composers of the early 20th century were faced with, either going backwards, or just sounding the same as Romantic era composers, and just this is what music sounds like now forever, or sort of starting to break some rules in the name of advancing and doing new stuff, doing stuff people hadn't heard before. And they break a lot of rules, starting with Stravinsky, but moving into Schoenberg, and then eventually, Pierre Boulez, and then, people moving into people who are still alive today, like Philip Glass and John Adams. And
hey, I saw Koyaanisqatsi the other day on TV.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Pluto, it's like an app that you can get. It's like a live streaming kind of app, and sure enough, Koyaanisqatsi was on it, if I pronounced that right. Philip Glass, man, it was really something else.
Yeah.
If you guys check it out, it's a very long Indian name. But if you Google with a K, Koyaanisqatsi.
Right, yeah. Definitely check out Philip Glass in general.
Minimalist composer.
A
lot of arpeggiations kind of thing.
Right, yeah. So, long story short, the 20th century was very deconstructivist and very experimental. People were just sort of experimenting with, well, what will it sound like if I do this? Both in terms of music theory and in terms of new media. Of course, technology brings the possibility of music that incorporates electronics. So electronic music becomes a thing. It brings the possibility of new instruments. It brings with it the rethinking of old instruments. Extended techniques become a thing.
I can't wait to talk about Henry Partch.
Yeah. Oh,
Speaking
man,
of
isn't
which,
he fascinating?
This guy made up all of his own crazy
Created his own instruments and things. And he was a hobo for a while.
Was he? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. He rode the trains for a big part of his life. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Fascinating guy.
The 20th century is definitely going to be one of the more
interesting
eras.
Yeah. So we've got a lot to talk about.
We do. Yeah. So we covered the kind of the pre-civilization. We kind of covered the ancient music of Greek and Rome, Greece and Rome.
Right, yeah.
And then we moved in. We kind of gave you guys a little tease of the coming episodes, which will be starting with Middle Ages music.
Yes, hopefully.
Then going into the Renaissance.
Then
moving on to Baroque.
to the Baroque.
Right on to classical.
Into the classical era.
Romantic.
The Romantic era.
And then finally
the 20th century.
20th century.
And then maybe finally, contemporary music, the 21st century, what is going on now.
Okay. Okay.
Which, ironically enough, is going to be easier to talk about.
Yeah, theory-wise.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm kind of glad that we spent a good year on this in this little dungeon here recording theory and ear training, because I think that is going to help make the history episodes make a bit more sense.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been wanting to talk about the history of music for a while. There are some challenges, copyright-related challenges.
Yes.
Pedagogy-related challenges. How do we talk about this exactly?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the theory will help the history make more sense, and hopefully the reverse will also be true. Hopefully the history will help the theory make a little more sense as to how some of this stuff came about. It's not just random stuff someone made up.
And along with these, something we didn't quite mention, along with these history episodes that we're going to be coming out with at some point, we're going to be including this beautiful long word, ethnomusicology.
Ethnomusicology, right. So all the stuff we've been talking about, even some of the prehistorical stuff we talked about today, this is all mainly Europe. Right? Which is one teeny, tiny, small part of the globe.
Yes, sir.
And ethnomusicology is the study of the history and cultural practices vis-a-vis music of all of the cultures of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Every culture has a musical tradition that is old and rich and complex as Europeans. Yeah. And so we would like to get into some of those at some point too. And even if it's only as superficially as we pour.
It might be, but it might be a little more in depth, because we have a colleague of ours that we went to school with at UAB, Neil Mathern.
Yes, correct? We do.
And Neil Mathern is, in fact, an
ethnomusicologist.
And I think I would greatly look forward to, A, just hearing that guy's voice again, but B, hearing what he has to say about some of these things. But I think this would be a more advanced, once we get into the more advanced phases of this podcast, it might be a little while down the road before we tackle the ragas of India or the microtonal scales of Asia.
Right, yeah.
So, but here's the thing, guys. Back to the challenge we were talking about earlier. I have a call to action.
Call to action.
Call to action. Call to action. I don't know. We gotta have a theme.
Professional musicians, again, ladies and gentlemen. We're
yeah.
This is what we do for a living.
Nothing that sounded like what I just did. But we are one of the challenges is to find versions of some of these old Gregorian chants, for example, that haven't been copyrighted. We're gonna have to start making our own. So I'm gonna be talking to people around here that I know who maybe church people or people in academia who are historians who know the way these things sound and can actually give us examples that we can actually therefore in turn play on our podcast to give you guys a better idea of what some of these things sound like. This has been one of the big holdups for the history episodes.
Yeah.
Because we want to make them as engaging and as beautiful and cool as possible. And that cannot be done without having some music in it.
Absolutely. So there you go.
So if we have people out there who might be a part of a church choir or choir directors, Renaissance fair people, whatever, man, we would love to hear your music. Send it in to us or give us, write us at info@musicstudent101.com. We can tell you a little bit more about what we're looking for. God, that coffee really is kicking in. I'm stumbling and I'm interrupting myself here. But I'm excited about this, actually. I really think that if we get some responses from some of these people, maybe you can be featured and heard all around the world.
Yeah, there you go.
Podcast.
So let us know.
Let us know. We'll be looking for that. And we're going to start with the Middle Ages, which is going to include a lot of Gregorian chant, monophony.
Right.
Then we have a few things that we're definitely looking for. So
yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you can help us help you. Right?
Yeah, so let us know.
Yep. Contact us. And we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yes, and the ones to come, we'll probably be back to theory next time.
Yep, there might be a little bit more of that, but it was a fun little aside, was it not?
I hope it was.
Thanks for your reviews. And keep them coming. If you wish to donate to our cause, click the donate button on the homepage of our website, musicstudent101.com.